Welcome back to the Author Biz. I'm Stephen Campbell, and this is the show where we deliver the information you need to become the CEO of your author business. Today's show is about the wide range of cover options that are available to authors today. Everything from DIY covers to using Fiverr to creating covers to custom covers to photo manipulation to illustrative covers, all the way up to hiring models and doing professional shoots as a way of building stock photos, essentially, for your covers. And that's something that can work if you have a long enough series. You can spread the cost of that over the length of the series. Our guest today is Andrew Dobell. I've had the pleasure of working with Andrew over the past several months, and I've seen some of the amazing covers that he's done for authors, including a recent situation that he did for Craig Martelle and Michael Anderle. They had done some covers for Craig's Nomad series, the Terry Henry Walton Chronicles, and they weren't happy with them, so they decided to redo them with models, and Andrew shot it, did some really cool video about how the process worked, and I'll link to some of that in the show notes. That was sort of the genesis for the idea of this show. So we'll talk with Andrew about all of the different ways of doing covers, and we'll talk in depth about the idea of the photo shoot and really ratcheting your covers up several levels. We recorded the interview in video so that we could pop in covers as we're discussing them. So if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see those covers popping in and out, as well as some photographs from the model shoots. If you're listening the way you normally listen through your phone or podcast app somewhere, then you'll see the covers and some of the images in the show notes. One of the things I did prior to recording the interview with Andrew, and this was just like literally 20 minutes before recording the interview, I went into the 20 Books to 50K group and just asked two questions. One, what's the most you've ever paid for a cover? And two, was it worth it? By the time Andrew and I spoke 20 minutes later, there were probably 20 or 30 responses, and the most expensive cover was $550 at that time. The least expensive was $0 for a do-it-yourself author who actually shared some of her covers in there, and they were quite good. By the time we finished, the most expensive covers had gotten up to $1,500. And interestingly enough, the response to the second question, was it worth it, was almost universally yes. There were a couple people that said no, but with 40 or 50 answers, the overwhelming response was yes, it was worth it. I found that interesting. Before we get to the interview, I want to thank some people who sent in show suggestions. We talked about this last week and a couple of weeks ago where I asked for show suggestions. Some of you just went well above and beyond. I've now got 4 full pages of really good show ideas. A couple of you even suggested guests with your suggestions, which is wonderful. It saves me time trying to figure out who best to use. So now it's just a question of scheduling and getting it all arranged. Those will start later this summer. Well, in the summer, not later this summer, around the start of the summer in late June. So I guess that's it for the pre-show. We got the interview started with me asking Andrew how things have changed in the brief period of time that he has been an indie author cover designer.
Okay, yeah. So I suppose the biggest thing that I've seen is that, because I've only been doing covers for maybe a past year or so in terms of kind of book covers for indie authors. But I mean, obviously I've been aware of self-publishing and indie authors for a while. And I think probably the biggest thing that I've seen in terms of how it's changed is that these days authors seem to be taking covers a lot more seriously and trying to put out something which is of a much more professional quality, whereas I mean you go back to before kind of it became such a good thing to do, and people were kind of printing their own books and having stacks of them in their garage and just selling them, that kind of way of doing things. The covers back then probably weren't as professional and stood out from traditionally published books. So, I mean, it's great to see so many authors really, taking covers much more seriously, and realizing the value of a really professional cover. And there are some stunning covers out there made by some really amazing artists. So, lots and lots of choice.
Yeah, you're not kidding. I oftentimes will just go to a genre to try and learn about a genre and look at the top 20, the top 50, top 100, and oftentimes I can't tell the difference anymore between. Well, actually, in some genres I can tell the difference between indie and traditionally published, in that the traditionally published covers aren't as good as some of the indie covers. They're doing it the way they've always done it, and the indie covers. I mean, you guys that are doing some of these covers, especially in genres like science fiction, I mean, it's an art form now, and it is some of the covers just take your breath away.
There's some really, really stunning work out there. I mean, the spaceship guy, Tom Edwards, is it? The stuff that he puts out is, I mean, it's amazing. It's really, really high quality, stuff, and it shows, and he's doing really, really well off it. So, absolutely. I completely agree. There's some really, really high quality stuff out there. And some of the traditional, publishing companies, some of them are still stuck in their own way of doing things. And they stand out. It's like, that's a traditionally published cover. It still looks like that. And it's great also because I think indie authors can sometimes take more risks and, do something, which a traditional publisher just wouldn't do. They wouldn't, be able to kind of go that way because they need to keep it safe. Because they need to make sure they hit their audience, whereas indie guys can pivot and change and think, I'm going to try this direction and do some really fun things. So
one of the cool things that indie authors can do, and I mean, the first time I heard someone talking about this was Joanna Penn a few years ago on her podcast, The Creative Pen, and she was just talking about, I'm just going to change all my covers because I think it's a good idea. Someone told me it would be a good idea, and then she just did it, and it was like instantaneous. And she had the new covers, and she had instant sales data to know whether or not it was working. And in her case, it was working. I mean, people are doing that all the time now, and you never see that happen at the traditional level. It's just the cover is the cover. If it sells, great. If it doesn't, too bad, Mr. Author. Your contract's not going to be renewed.
Absolutely.
We're moving on.
Also, the fact that sometimes these traditional covers may have an error on them or something like that, and I've heard it said that an author has spotted an error on the cover and they just won't change it. And once it's done, it's done. Whereas we can go back, open that Photoshop file, fix it, upload it again, and it's fixed. And also the sales thing, being able to kind of, right, those covers, that's how they've done. These are my new covers, upload, and then you have instant feedback. If they're working or if they're not. You can see that sales data come in straight away. And it's just one of the joys of indie publishing, I suppose, that we can do these amazing things.
And, I mean, you and I share a joint client, Michael Anderle. And Michael's series, the Cartharian Gambit series, I'm pretty sure he did the initial covers for those. And then I think there was probably a watershed moment in his mind like, oh, my God, I'm selling a lot of these books. Maybe I should spend some money and get better covers. And I know at some point he contacted you. And for the first, I think, 7 books now, the covers came from you. And it's just interesting, the evolution, and that's something that a lot of indie authors could go through. We're going to talk about the different types of covers, and I know in Michael's case, he didn't want to spend any money at all in the beginning. He didn't want to spend money on editors or covers or anything until he knew that the books were going to sell.
That really was the time when I broke into covers. So, I mean, I to go a little bit of history, I've been doing this kind of artwork for a while, which is kind of the photo composite stuff, and I've been wanting to get into doing covers. And so I started putting my own books out there, doing my own covers, and also just showing my work around. And Michael was one of the first people to come to me and say, hey, I like your work. I've got these covers which I want to redo. So I had a look at his covers, and I mean, they were very obviously kind of, home done. But he was doing really well off these books, and he wanted covers that kind of did his books justice. So we went down that process of creating these covers for him. So as you say, I did the covers for the first 7 books, which are more along the urban fantasy route. After book 7, his books go into more of a sci-fi route, and he wanted kind of spaceships and things like that. So they moved. He used a different artist to do those, because I don't really do spaceship stuff. But I'm still doing. I have a lot to thank Michael for, because I do all sorts of now his kind of spin-off series and his omnibus books and all these kind of things. So if you are watching, Michael, thank you.
Yes, and this is a great point. I'm going to pop in one of the maybe I'll pop in several of the omnibus covers here, because you just did those recently, and they are fantastic. Originally all of the omnibus. I don't know what the right word plural is for omnibus. As a joke, we're calling it omnibuy, B-U-Y. Yeah, but there was one cover. It was the original Death Becomes Her cover, with different text on it for all of the different omni-buy. And you just pop something into the Slack group and saying, hey, I kind of had this idea, and it's like, wow, that's fabulous. So all of a sudden we had 5 of them.
So, I mean, it was an idea I had a while back, and I did the first one, and I don't think, because we talk on the Slack group, and messages go back and forth. I think he missed it. I don't think he really kind of registered on his radar at the time. But I posted it again recently and said, hey, look, I did this omnibus cover because I had this idea of, okay, so his books are based around his main character of Bethany Ann. And I had this idea of having the character, the model that we used, kind of sat on a chair, and then there's a computer behind her, 3 screens, and each screen was the cover of one of the 3 books in that omnibus. And so I put that together, and he liked it, but he wanted to check, if other people liked it. So he put it on his Facebook group, and he got some really, really great feedback. Everyone really seemed to like it. And so it was like, okay, let's do the rest. And so we went through, and I've done 5, I think, now. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and it is, and that's a great piece of advice for people out there listening. When you have these ideas for covers, it's great if you have a fan base established or a reader base established to go to them and ask what they like. And I mean, this turned around very quickly. It was like, here's the old style, here's the new style, and it was like 85-15. We like the new style, and so those got turned around very quickly, and all of the covers for the different omnibus versions were replaced. So let's get into the real purpose of the show, which is the different levels of cover designs that are available to authors out there, depending on where they're at in their author journey. And let's just start at the very basic, I'm going to do my own cover level. What are the options available for people to do their own? I know occasionally I'll need to just throw together a cover for a book funnel thing. I mean, if the cover's not done yet, you have to have a cover in BookFunnel. So I'll just go to Canva and I'll just grab an image and put some text on it and say that, the super cool cover's coming later. Yeah. But it's a cover. So there are people that are producing some pretty nice looking covers using Canva. What other options are available for DIYers?
Good question. I probably wouldn't be able to give you all the options. I mean, there's so many out there. But I mean, if you're doing it yourself, I mean, you could do everything from just kind of taking a photo and using something that you have taken a photo of, through to buying your own stock image, which you can do very, very cheaply, and you can just go to Shutterstock or one of the numerous other stock image sites and get download an image, usually for a few dollars or a few pounds, and open that in Photoshop, put your text on, and there you go. You've got a cover, and you can do it either completely for free, and it's just your time putting it together, or just for a few dollars, and you've got yourself a basic cover. And some of those can look really, really cool, and it just depends on your story, and does it fit the theme of your book and all that kind of stuff, and also probably your skill as a cover designer. I mean, how good you are in Photoshop at sorting out that text and putting that together. So
it's surprising to me the number of covers that I see where the image is pretty good, and then the authors will just take some text and slap it up without really giving a lot of thought to the right font and placement and things like that. And I think that's a lot of where an artistic eye comes in.
The font and the text and the placement of it is just as important as the actual image behind the font as well. And it's all about that. When you look at that image, when you're browsing through Amazon and you've got these little thumbnails flying past you, you need to be able to read that text. It needs to fit the book, but you need to be able to also read it. So it needs to be a legible text. It needs to stand out from the background, and there's lots of ways of doing that. But I mean, it's just you just got to take time over it a little bit. Just think about it. Just take a step back. Maybe create the cover and then just close it and come back to it in the afternoon and have another look at it, or show it to a friend, someone whose opinion you trust, or even post it to the 20 Books group or something like that, and just get some feedback. There's so many options out there in terms of getting feedback, and just because often, I mean, we do it as artists. You get close to a cover, you create that cover, and you put everything together, and you're looking at it, and you get to the point where you're not seeing the flaws, you're not seeing the errors in the work anymore. And that's where it's kind of, right, okay, I've taken it as far as I can. You send it to your client and you go, what do you think? And they often come back with, well, I like this, I don't like that. And then you go back in and you tweak it. And
now it's interesting. You're an author as well. And you've got some books that are doing pretty well right now. Do you want to give yourself a shout out for any like your most recent book?
So I have a few books out. I have 2 series. My first series was an urban fantasy series. I've got 4 books out in that series, and that's done okay. And then I recently I shifted and I wrote a cyberpunk book, which is the first in series. Book 2 is coming out in the next few weeks. And that's done really, really well. Taken me completely by surprise how well that's done. So yeah, I'm going to be pursuing that avenue for a little while. But yeah, so the book, the cyberpunk book is called The New Prometheus. And you can find that on Amazon. And the first book in my urban fantasy series is called Epic Calling, and you can find that and its sequels on Amazon as well.
And if you're watching this on video and I'm able to do it, I will be popping the covers in so you can actually see what he's talking about as we go through the different covers, and you can see the covers that he's done.
I mean,
for himself.
I went the cheap route and I did my own covers, but I suppose I have a
that's a little different.
Have a leg up there because I do covers.
Now, I mean, you mentioned as a cover designer getting too close to the work and not seeing the errors, and that's the reason I brought out that you're an author, because we all do that. I mean, we write our books, and you read it for the 19th time, and it is absolutely perfect, and someone else reads it, and they see a typo in the third word of the second paragraph on the first page. So it's interesting that you say that about covers as well, because I would think that would be completely different.
No, it's
but
not.
I'm sure that what you're saying is right.
It's absolutely the same.
All right, so we go from DIY to probably the next least expensive way of finding cover design. There are a lot of people that use Fiverr. And I've seen some Fiverr covers. Some are okay. Some are just make you want to slap your head and say, wow, why did they do that? And some are, some are not bad. So, and in general, they tend to be reasonably inexpensive. So, I mean, what are your thoughts for somebody who's new, has no idea whether they're going to sell 3 copies of their book because they've got 3 siblings, or $10,000?
I mean, Fiverr's definitely an option. I mean, if you're not feeling confident about doing your own covers and you just want to outsource it, but you just don't have the funds to pay an artist to do it properly, then the next option would be something like Fiverr. And there are some really great artists on Fiverr. It probably takes a little bit of hunting to find the right one. I've not used Fiverr for covers myself. I've used it for other things. But I've seen a range of covers come from Fiverr. I've seen, as you said right at the start there, I've seen the whole range. And just be, I suppose one thing to point out was, because I saw a cover recently done by Fiverr, and someone off Fiverr, should I say. And I just looked at it and I thought, that looks like several images kind of layered together, and some of them look like actual artworks. And I mentioned, and a few other people mentioned the same thing, just check where those images have come from and the rights to those images. Just make sure that the images that artist has used is stock images, and that you don't get slapped with a lawsuit for infringing copyright because someone's used someone else's artwork. So just be careful on something like Fiverr that you are getting an original. But I mean, I have seen some really great covers come from Fiverr, and it's absolutely a way to go, especially early on in your career, when you can't be spending a few £100s on a custom cover. Then absolutely, Fiverr's an option to check out. And probably, again, best thing to do, there's a whole community of artists and authors out there who will happily advise you on this. Go on to these forums, Facebook forums, 20 Books, etc., and ask, and just say, is there a good recommendation for an artist on Fiverr to do my cover? And I'm sure you'll get a boatload of recommendations.
Yeah, probably get 20. At 20 minutes before we started this interview, I went into the 20 Books group and asked a simple question: what's the most you've ever paid for a cover, and was it worth it? And there's only 20 minutes to get answers, so there were maybe, I don't know, there might have been 20 that I got, but it ranged from some of the authors that I know that are doing really well, making a lot of money. They were paying over $500 for a cover, and it went all the way down to free to the DIY people. And there was a wonderful lady who shared some of the covers that she had done for herself, and they look great. And there was another gentleman who posted one that I think he'd paid $25 for from Fiverr. Wasn't bad. There were people that said $150, $450. I mean, there was a range from free to over $500. The interesting thing was, everybody that answered the "was it worth it" question was yes. So no matter how much they paid for the cover, the answer was yes.
Yeah, which, I mean, that probably is relative also to where they are in their author career. I mean, someone that's, got a whole ton of books out there, is doing really well. They can spend more, and they're going to see the sales from that reflects the amount of money that they've invested in the book. So there's probably an element of that involved as well. But as long as you're happy with the cover at the end of the day, I mean that's the main thing. This is your work of fiction, your idea, and that cover is going to sell your book. So you need to make sure that you're kind of happy with that cover. Absolutely.
But with that being said, don't let not having the perfect cover keep you from publishing your book, because you can change it very easily. I completely
agree. And again, I could always go back to Michael Anderle, who he just threw together his own covers, and people loved them. And even though it was just some stock images, quite low resolution stock images, and it didn't hold back his books at all. I mean, we all know how well he's doing. So by far the most important thing is get your books out there. So if you have to put it out there with a kind of placeholder cover, don't worry too much. I mean, obviously we all want the high quality professional covers, but sometimes you just need to get your book out there. You as an author will know what you need to do. If you're happy to wait and you want to save up and get that professional cover, by all means do it. If you just can't wait, you need that book out there, then do a $5 cover or something like that, and then get some proceeds over the next few months from your books, and then invest in a better cover. That's the beauty of indie authors, is that we can pivot, we can change, we can get new covers whenever we want them.
Now, we are slowly working our way up to like super high-end custom covers, but the next thing on the scale on the way up is probably the pre-made cover, where people like you and there are other cover designers who probably in their spare time just put together covers for different genres, put them on a website, and you can buy them. And those covers, depending on who you're buying them from, can be, what's the right word? Custom just to you, specific just to you, single-use type pre-made covers, and others are anybody can buy it. It might be $100, but you might see 7 other versions of it on Amazon in a week. So how is that as an option for someone?
I mean, this is the thing, that they're all good options. I don't think there's any which is a really bad option, because it depends on you as an author and what you're able to afford and what you're happy with. But I mean, pre-mades are a great option. They're a great way of doing things, because as artists we just love what we do, and so in between kind of doing these client works, we will often have an idea for an artwork or something like that, and we get some spare time, and so we just do it. And we'll often have these artworks for sale, and as pre-made covers, and it's a great way of getting a very professional cover for a fraction of the price that you would probably pay if you wanted something custom done. The slight drawback with that is that obviously you kind of need the cover and your text to fit. So it is a case of kind of hunting through the various websites and finding one that kind of fits your work. Or the other way of doing things, and I know a lot of authors who do this, they'll see a cover which they love, and it's like, right, I love that cover, I'm going to buy that book, and then I'm going to craft a story to fit. Yeah, absolutely. Really? I mean, I know a few that have done that with kind of like Tom Edwards spaceship covers, because they're quite generic. They'll see the cover, they'll love it, and they'll just keep it on the back burner as something where they've written the story, and it's like, yes, that cover finally fits with this work, and then they'll publish it. There's absolutely. I mean, there's no right or wrong way, but just look around and see what options work best.
Another benefit that I would assume is available for the pre-made covers is that they're available immediately. Either the cover designer could put the text on there for you, or you could do it yourself if you're comfortable doing that. But what's for a custom cover? Because we're getting to custom covers. What's the time frame for a custom cover, and how much input do you need from the author to even know which direction to go?
Right. So yeah, the benefit of the pre-mades is that they're quick. They're there. You buy them, and they're instantly available, and you've got it on your cover. Custom covers, they take longer because the artwork has to be created usually from scratch, and so that naturally will take longer. So I mean, the benefit of custom covers is that it's specific to your book and it will fit. The drawback, I suppose the one drawback is that they can take time to do. So having done this for a while now, working with various authors, if you want to go down the custom cover route, one of the biggest things to be aware of is that these things can take time to do. So it's worth planning well ahead. And I mean, eventually, I'm sure we'll be talking about the custom photo shoot covers in a minute. But these things can take, sometimes they can take months to finally put together until you've got, a final cover. They're not quick. So I mean, just be aware of that. Talk if you found a cover designer that you're wanting to do a custom cover with. Talk to them about timescale. Find out roughly how long it's going to take, what the lead time needs to be, because I suppose one of the things about us as authors, and I do it myself with my own books, I'm just as guilty for this as anyone else, is that you're writing the story and you're just engrossed in the story and you're writing it, you get to the end of it and you're getting quite close to publishing it and you suddenly realize I haven't got a cover, and so you're then scrabbling around to try and get a cover in the time scale that you want it. And everyone does this. I've had this multiple times, and I do it myself. I'll write the book, I get to the end of the book, and I've just not had time to create that cover. In fact, I've got it for book 2 in the new Prometheus series now. The book, I've nearly got the book. Probably tomorrow I'll be able to send it to the editor. I still don't have a cover, so that's my next thing. I need to put together a cover for it. So, yeah.
All right. So when we get into the realm of the custom cover, there's a range there. There's the photo manipulation covers where maybe the artist goes out and finds some stock images and works some magic on them and creates a custom cover for you. And then there are the graphic. I don't know what the right term is, but you're creating actual artwork for illustration. Yes. Illustration covers, and then there are the covers where you're going out and hiring models and doing all of that. So let's quickly, I think people probably understand what the photo manipulation thing is, but talk about that just for a minute or so.
So you've got your 3 options there. So the first one, and probably the cheapest of the 3, is doing the stock photo covers, which is you're going on to stock photo sites, you're finding the relevant images based on descriptions from the author. So their main character is tall, brunette, and whatever, and then you're hunting through for the right models, and then putting them together. And so that's probably the cheapest because it's all sat behind computer stuff. So it's just hunting through stuff online, finding the right images, and then putting that together in Photoshop. So always be aware of rights in this kind of thing, because you need to make sure that you have the right to use the images. That's probably the most important thing. Only ever use stock images that you have the rights for. So for instance, on Shutterstock, you can go on there and check the rights and how you can use it. Some images on there will be noted as editorial use only, and so obviously you can't use those. You can download them, but you can't use them on a commercial cover. So just be aware of your rights. I mean, I have done it in the past where an author has said, well, I live local to the area in terms of kind of putting a background together for the character. I can just go out and take some photos for you. And it's like, okay, great, and they can go out and, providing they've got a half decent camera, they can take some background pictures, send them to you, and then you haven't got any rights issues with those because they took them. But that's definitely a really good option. You get a great custom cover. It can be slightly limiting in terms of kind of costume and props and things like that, but there's lots of kind of Photoshop wizardry which can kind of get these characters looking close, or if not perfectly, like the character that you have in your head.
And I have seen the way authors interact with you, and they'll see a cover and it's like, yeah, I really like that, but could you move this, and could you make this a little darker, and could you make that a little lighter, and could you put some smoke here? And I'm in my own mind, I'm thinking, no one can do that. And then, the next day, there it is. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, these things are created in Photoshop, and without getting too technical, I mean, I'll have a Photoshop file which has umpteen layers in it, and you've got sky and, so maybe several layers of background and mist and lighting effects, and then the characters, and then more mist and lighting effects or whatever. And you can move things around and add things in and, lighten and darken things. And I can probably do most things that an author would need me to do in terms of creating their art for them.
All right, now let's talk about an illustrated cover and what's involved in creating an illustrated cover. And we've probably all seen, I think specifically of science fictions, and you were mentioning spaceship covers, things like that. But that you see these covers that are just pure illustration. It's not a photo. It's just somebody has put an incredible amount of time into creating this illustration for a fantastic
absolutely.
cover.
And I mean, there are some fantastic artists out there. It's a great way of getting a cover. The illustration covers tend to lend themselves to certain genres above others. You'll often see them in kind of epic fantasy. That is a popular one for kind of like the illustration look. As you say, the kind of the spaceship ones are kind of all illustrative. So that it tends to be the more sci-fi fantasy end of things, where you've got fantastical elements and dragons and weird and wonderful things like that flying around. And they're a great way of getting a custom cover. They can be time consuming for an artist to create. But they allow for a lot of customization. You can get characters looking exactly how you want them to look on the cover. And there are some really amazing artists out there who will do your cover at a whole range of pricing. They don't necessarily have to be the most expensive, ways of doing covers. I mean, there's plenty of artists out there who can do them, just for maybe, I don't know, $100 or so. I mean, if they're just starting out on DeviantArt or something like that, then, they're probably going to be, they'll just be happy to have their, image on a cover. And then there's those of us that have been doing it a while, and we tend to charge a bit more. So.
All right. So when you're if I'm an author dealing with a cover designer like you, there are rights issues that I, as an author, need to understand. So what's that conversation like between the author and the artist?
Again, right. So the rights issue, it depends greatly on the artist that you're talking to. Every artist will have their ways of dealing with the rights. So this relates to how, as an author, this relates to how you can use that artwork. So it could be that once the artist is finished, they effectively sign copyright over to you, and so you then own that artwork. The artist will usually retain the right to kind of show it in their portfolio, but otherwise they can't do anything with it. They can't sell it again. They can't license it. They can't do anything with it. It is yours. And in that respect, you can then do anything you like with that cover. The next option would be for the artist to license you the artwork. So the artist retains the copyright, but they grant you certain rights, and to tell you what you can and can't do with the cover, where you can use it, and for how long you can use it. Again, it's just probably a lot of negotiation. I would say most artists will either give you the copyright and just retain display rights, or they will give you a pretty good license and you can basically use it in your books and in your advertising and all that kind of thing. So just be careful, because I suppose I've not come across them personally, but there probably will be artists out there who'll be quite restrictive, and they'll say you can use that artwork for a year and you can only use it on your book cover, you can't use it in your advertising and all that. But it's a case of talking to them, talk to the artists, find out what rights they're happy to give you, and be open to a discussion with them, and try to come to an agreement that you're happy with, but do it before they do the work, because they might not.
Yeah, I think the important thing here is to just don't make an assumption about the rights. Ask, is there typically is there a written agreement for something at the custom level?
It can take the form of just kind of a written email between you, so you've got proof in that regard, through to a kind of properly formatted contract, outlining the who gets what rights, and then you have to sign it, and you've got that. So it's just worth have that conversation really early on. What rights can I have? Where can I use the book? Where can I use the cover, should I say? And just be aware of that up front before you get into, right, I want my cover to look like this.
Okay. Now I want to get into, and this is the final part of the interview. I saw a video that you had done after you had done a photo shoot for Craig Martelle, who's been a guest on this show, for one of his series. It's going to be a fairly long series. I think there were 3 or 4 books already published at the time, and he decided I want to change the covers. And so there was this process that you and he and his co-author Michael Anderle went through to select models, and then there was a photo shoot, and then there was the cover creation. And the covers are just incredible, and I'll post some here. But you did this video of one of the essentially of a model turning into his character through makeup, and it was a time-lapse video, and I've probably watched it a half dozen times. It just fascinates the heck out of me. And then to go and see the covers and to see everything that's involved in this. I will post the video in the show notes, but kind of walk us through that process, which seems to me like a super high-end process where you're going out, finding models, having a photo shoot, and then creating covers. Probably not the kind of thing you want to do for one book, but maybe if you have a long series, there's a lot that you could get out of something like this.
I love doing, kind of photo shoot covers. It's probably my favorite way of creating these covers, because you can create something unique. So this is my Craig Martelle's Nomad series, and when we first started it, they wanted to do a photo shoot, but they weren't sure how well it would do. So we decided to go down the stock image route, and we did 3 or 4 covers which were stock images. But by that point, we were running out of photos of the models that we had chosen from Shutterstock to portray the characters, and it was just getting to the point where, okay, we really need to do a shoot here. If this is going to carry on, we're going to run out of pictures, and it's just not going to work. So we decided to do the custom photo shoot. So this tends to be it can be quite a long process. It depends a lot on what you're doing. I've done custom photo shoots for a number of different authors now. Now, the one for Craig was probably slightly more complicated because we had 2 characters on the cover, which means finding 2 models. Each has to fit the character. We have to find props. We have to find costumes. We have to book the shoot, do the shoot, and then create the covers. So this can be a really long process, and it's not something you want to kind of rush through. So yeah, I mean, it was kind of, I start off by asking the author, what do your characters look like? Tell me about your characters. Give me a physical description of who they are. And so they did this and gave me the description. And then it's a case of hunting through the modeling websites, and there's various ones. I mean, here in the UK, we have a site called Purple Port, which is a place where models and photographers can upload their profiles and show pictures of their work, and you can contact the models directly, or you can go through modeling agencies, which that they're all around the world, and you can hunt through their books and try and find the models that you want. So there was a lot of back and forth. I think the two models who we ended up with were not probably the initial two that we first picked out. I think we went through kind of 2 or 3 choices before we landed on the final two, because you'll go online, you find a picture of the model. Oh, that's great. He looks perfect. That is Terry. And then, you can't try to contact that model and they just don't get back to you. It's like, oh, okay, right. So I need to look again. So you look again, you find someone else, you get in touch, and they get back in touch with you and go, yeah, okay, I'm interested. And then all of a sudden, either they'll just disappear on you, or decide they don't want to do the shoot, or they're not happy with something, or they can't do it in the time frame that you need it to do it. And it's kind of it's probably the most painstaking part of the process, because there's so much back and forth talking to models until you eventually find the two that fit the characters and are happy to do it, in the time frame that you want to do it. Once you've got the two models, I then needed to I needed to order the props and the costumes. So Craig has, obviously, they're his characters, so he has an idea of what they look like. And Terry needed this kind of US Marine kind of fatigues. Now, they're not easy to get. I ended up hunting around on eBay and sending Craig pictures. Is this a Marine outfit? Is this a Marine outfit? Eventually, we found one. I ordered it. It had to come. It came over from the States because I'm in the UK, and then eventually arrived, as did various other props, including the BB guns that we used, because we're in the UK. We don't have real guns over here that we can use on these shoots. So it was a case of ordering BB guns, which kind of looked the part. Then booking the studio, booking the models on that particular date, booking the makeup artist who you see in the video, and getting that all synced up on the one day, and then we do the shoot. And I love doing the shoots. They're always great fun. And yes, so I decided to show a little bit behind the scenes, peek behind the scenes of what goes into it. So I set up my camera in front of the model just before she started having her makeup done, so you could see what goes into that. And so the makeup artist, Tanya, did an amazing job. And because the character has a white streak of hair, so we got some hair inserts and kind of hair extensions and put those in, and did the shoot. Once we'd done that, I mean, I was able to turn the covers around pretty quick, because I can probably put together a composite cover in a few hours, really. Not.
Now, you said we did the shoot.
Okay,
you're kind of just glossing over that. How many pictures did you take in the shoot? I mean, this is not like, let's say I need 12 covers, so I'm going to take 12 pictures.
When I'm doing these shoots, generally speaking, they're for a series of books, so it's more than one cover. And I would only really recommend doing a photo shoot if either you're stupid rich and you can just spend the money, or you're doing this for a series of books. This is a long-term investment, and then it makes financial sense, because you're going to get lots of covers out of one shoot. I talked to Craig and Michael about the characters. I was asking, give me the characters' personalities, so I could then present the models with a sheet and read the character description so they know how to act. I then had to, most models in the UK have not held a gun or fired a gun, so I had to coach them through that and trigger discipline, not all that kind of thing. And then it was probably about 4 hours worth of shooting time went into that, not counting the makeup and whatnot beforehand, of going through, pose after pose, just coming up with lots of ideas and putting them in different combinations, changing their outfits, holding different props and weapons and things like that. And it takes a while to do, but it is a lot of fun. And I probably ended up with, it was over 1,000 photos.
Okay, so you've got material forever.
Yeah.
And so if there are things that come up like
Yes.
an omnibus cover that was sort of not planned for, then it's like, okay, well, let me just go find a couple of different images of the two people, and then I'll put them in the right place, and it'll all work out, and it'll be fantastic, which you did, and that omnibus is, I mean, the cover's done. I think the book is, the omnibus is available for sale now. Yeah, so I'll pop that cover in there as well. But it was a kind of thing where it's like, I remember Craig saying, we need an omnibus cover. What do we do? And I saw these photo sheets just popping up on the screen, and I thought, how many pictures did you take? And so that explains it, over 1,000.
When I'm shooting and I'm putting like 4 hours worth of time into it, then I always make sure to shoot the heck out of these shoots, because I need choice. I need as much choice as I can get, and it gives value for money for the author as well. It means that I now have a bank of photos from that shoot, which will easily last the full. I know there's about 10 planned in the series, so it should last the full 10 plus the omnibus plus any Facebook advertising kind of imagery, marketing imagery, anything like that. There's probably more than enough imagery that I've taken that we can use for that. So that's just one shoot, 4 hours worth of shooting time, and he's got his
and without getting into specific amounts, because I don't want to share other people's business, but it was not cheap to do the photo shoot. There is a significant upfront cost, but if you stretch that over 10 to 12 books, all of a sudden your cost of the average cover is in line with what you want to pay for a cover.
I mean, this is the thing. I mean, because I often have authors come to me and say, look, I really like the idea of doing a custom photo shoot, but the upfront cost scares me. How much is this going to be? And it's like, okay, well, the upfront cost is probably going to be, significant. I'll talk in generic terms, because it does vary, depending on lots of different things. For instance, if I know models that will work very cheaply through to working with models from an agency where you're paying, in the UK, you can be paying, anything from £300 upwards, just for a model. And that's not, and that's not counting studio costs, prop and costume costs, my fees for the day, and then the editing and whatnot as well. So, it can be a significant investment, but you have to, if you're doing this for a series, you have to think, well, I'm spreading that out over 3, 5, 10 books, however many it is, and okay, you're paying a lot right at the start, but once you've got those images, actually putting together the cover afterwards, so like 5 months down the line when I'm doing cover 6, it's a few hours work, for me to put that cover together. It's not terribly expensive. So yes, it's a big upfront cost, but it's more of an investment. You have to look at it as an investment in your business and in your books, and that is the way to do it. And when because I try to make it as doable as possible for most authors. So, I mean, I will usually say, look, you can pay for this in a couple of installments, or, you can pay this up front because that's cost, and then everything else, we can pay that later. And just, I'm happy to do that and discuss that with people and try and make it so that it fits in someone's budget, because we've all got bills to pay at the end of the day. So.
Yes. Andrew, this has been absolutely fantastic. Again, I'll have images for the covers you've done. You'll see them in the video if you watch it on video. I'll have images in the show notes, and I will have that video that we've talked about that's so much fun to watch of getting the model ready for the photo shoot. So you'll be able to see that and then see some of the covers. It's very cool. Where can people find you online,
Probably
Andrew?
the best place is through my, well, it depends what you want. If you're looking for my covers, go to creativeedgestudios.co.uk. If you're looking for my books, then you need to go to andrewdobellauthor.co.uk.
All right, and I will link to both of those. And if people just want to chat with you, you are in 20 books.
Yeah, I'm in 20 books, and you can just find me on Facebook as well, and I'm more than happy to talk to you about covers.
All right, thank you so much for being here. This has been terrific. Thanks.